The grand courtroom of the state courthouse was packed with reporters, attorneys, and political observers. The tension in the air was thick, anticipation crackling like static electricity. Karoline Leavitt walked in, her heels clicking sharply against the polished wooden floor. She was poised, confident, and completely unfazed by the intimidating surroundings. At the front, Judge Daniel Whitmore leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the bench as he studied her with an amused expression. He was an old-school legal powerhouse, known for his sharp tongue and no-nonsense approach. But today, he was in the mood for a little entertainment. "So, Miss Leavitt," the judge said, smirking, "I assume you're here to give us all a lesson in politics instead of law." A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom, mostly from lawyers who enjoyed seeing political figures put in their place. Karoline, however, didn't flinch. She adjusted her blazer and met his gaze with unwavering confidence. "Your Honor," she said smoothly, "I'm here because the law and politics often intersect. And when they do, it's important to get both right." The room quieted slightly. No one had expected her to fire back so quickly. But Judge Whitmore wasn't done testing her yet. "Let's not kid ourselves," he continued, leaning forward. "You're here because you like the attention. You want to make headlines, isn't that right?" Karoline arched a brow. "Respectfully, Your Honor, I'd rather make history." The response sent a ripple through the crowd. Whitmore's smirk faltered for just a moment, but then he laughed, shaking his head. "All right, Miss Leavitt. Let's see if you know your way around the law as well as you know your way around a podium." And with that, the battle had officially begun. The proceedings moved forward, but the tension never eased. Every time Karoline made a point, Judge Whitmore interrupted with sarcastic remarks. He questioned her expertise, mocked her phrasing, and even rolled his eyes at some of her statements. It was clear he wasn't just testing her knowledge. He was trying to humiliate her. But Karoline wasn't the type to back down. "Miss Leavitt," the judge sighed, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this isn't a campaign rally. We deal in facts here, not emotions." Karoline took a deep breath, her patience thinning. "Then let's deal in facts, Your Honor. The law is clear on this issue, and if you'd like, I can cite multiple precedents supporting my argument." The judge chuckled. "Oh, please, enlighten us." Karoline walked confidently to the legal desk, pulling out a file. "Case Murray v. State, 2017. Jefferson v. Madison, 2005. The Supreme Court ruling on federal jurisdiction in 2013. Need I go on?" The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge's clerks exchanged looks of quiet surprise. Whitmore pursed his lips, clearly irritated that she had come prepared. "That's interesting," he muttered, flipping through the papers she had presented. Karoline folded her arms. "No, Your Honor. That's the law." A hush fell over the room. The judge had been trying to make her look uninformed. Instead, he had just given her the perfect opportunity to showcase her expertise. Judge Whitmore had lost control of the exchange, and he knew it. His frustration started showing in small ways: his tapping fingers, his sighs, the way he avoided looking directly at her. Finally, after a particularly sharp rebuttal from Karoline, he snapped. "Enough!" he barked, slamming his gavel. "Miss Leavitt, I don't appreciate your attitude. If you want to lecture people, perhaps you should find a different profession." The courtroom gasped. It was one thing for a judge to be firm, but outright hostility toward a respected public figure was another. Karoline took a step forward, her voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I am in the right profession. Because if public servants like me don't stand up to injustice, who will?" The silence that followed was deafening. Even Judge Whitmore seemed momentarily lost for words. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price. By now, the entire courtroom had shifted. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras zoomed in, and even the judge's own legal aides seemed hesitant to make eye contact with him. Judge Whitmore took a deep breath, rubbing his temple. He had planned on making an example out of Karoline, but instead she had flipped the script on him. He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "You're sharp, Miss Leavitt. I'll give you that." Karoline didn't move. She simply waited. "You're passionate, and I respect that," the judge continued, his tone measured. "But passion alone doesn't win legal arguments. Precision does." Karoline nodded. "Then let's be precise, Your Honor. The law supports my case, and I have just provided undeniable evidence of that. So, what exactly are we debating?" Judge Whitmore stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he let out a small chuckle. "You don't give up, do you?" Karoline smiled slightly. "Not when I'm right." The judge sighed, shaking his head. "All right, Miss Leavitt, proceed." It wasn't an outright victory, but it was something close. She had turned the tables, and the entire courtroom knew it. The weight of the moment settled over the courtroom. The dynamic had shifted. No longer was Karoline Leavitt the subject of ridicule. She was now the person everyone in the room was paying close attention to. Even Judge Whitmore, for all his condescending smirks and sarcastic remarks, was forced to acknowledge that she wasn't just here to put on a show. But Whitmore wasn't done pushing back. "Miss Leavitt," he said, tapping his gavel lightly, "you've certainly done your homework, I'll give you that. But let's not pretend you're the first person to walk in here with a stack of legal documents and a fiery speech. The law is open to interpretation, and as the judge in this courtroom, that interpretation is mine to decide." Karoline clasped her hands together, nodding slightly. "That's true, Your Honor. But interpretation only holds weight when it's supported by legal precedent. And everything I've presented today is backed by the very laws this court upholds." Judge Whitmore opened his mouth to argue, but before he could, the courtroom doors swung open. A young clerk rushed in, holding a folder, his expression frazzled. He hurried up to the judge, whispering something in his ear as he handed over the folder. Whitmore's face darkened. The courtroom held its collective breath. The judge flipped through the papers quickly, his jaw tightening with every passing second. Finally, he closed the folder with a sharp snap and looked up at Karoline with a newfound seriousness. "Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice a notch lower, "it appears you're not the only one who's been doing their research. This document just came in regarding the very case you're arguing. It seems there are new developments." The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Karoline remained calm, though her pulse quickened. She hadn't expected this, but she wasn't about to show any sign of weakness. "What developments, Your Honor?" she asked evenly. Whitmore hesitated, glancing at his legal aides. He looked almost hesitant, and that was when she knew. Something had just tipped the balance in her favor. Judge Whitmore cleared his throat, signaling for silence in the courtroom. His once confident demeanor now held an edge of uncertainty as he addressed the room. "The document I've just received," he began, his tone measured, "contains previously undisclosed records that directly impact the proceedings before us." Karoline's eyes narrowed slightly. "And would you be so kind as to share what those records contain, Your Honor?" The judge hesitated. It was clear that whatever was in those pages was something he hadn't anticipated. Slowly, he removed his glasses and set them down on the bench. "It appears that the legal grounds you've been arguing on, Miss Leavitt, are entirely valid." The words hung in the air. The weight of them seemed to take a moment to settle in, and then gasps rippled through the crowd. Karoline remained composed, but inside she felt an undeniable sense of victory. The judge sighed heavily. "Not only that," he continued, "but the evidence here suggests that a previous ruling on a similar matter may have been made in error, thus setting a precedent that should not have been relied upon." Karoline felt her heart beat faster. This was bigger than she had anticipated. She had come in to argue a case, to prove her point. But now, this case could potentially overturn a flawed legal precedent. Judge Whitmore sat back, rubbing his temple. He wasn't looking at her with condescension anymore. No, this was something else. Respect. The room held its collective breath. Judge Whitmore, once smug and dismissive, now sat in silent contemplation, tapping his fingers against the bench. His arrogance had faded, replaced by something far less familiar: unease. He exhaled, rubbing his temple as if trying to process the weight of what had just unfolded. The new evidence had changed everything. "Miss Leavitt," he finally said, his voice slower than before, "I owe you an apology." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. No one had expected this, not from him. Karoline remained still, allowing his words to settle before responding. "I appreciate that, Your Honor," she said, her tone measured but firm. Whitmore leaned back slightly, glancing toward the gallery where attorneys, reporters, and spectators all waited for his next move. He sighed, shaking his head. "You came in here today, and I assumed you were just another political figure, looking to grandstand. Another talking head trying to use my courtroom as a stage. But I was wrong." Karoline arched an eyebrow, but remained silent. She knew better than to interrupt a man struggling with his own ego. "You didn't just bring passion," he continued, gripping the arms of his chair. "You brought the law. And more than that, you brought a truth I can't ignore." A few gasps could be heard among the crowd. The once impenetrable judge was admitting his error. "But," he added, regaining some of his usual authority, "a courtroom is not won by sentiment. It's won by the strength of argument. So, Miss Leavitt, I want to hear it. Your final argument. Your last chance to convince me that I should make a ruling that will set a new precedent." Karoline inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment. She had fought hard to get to this point. Now, she had to make it count. Karoline stepped forward, the courtroom silent as all eyes fixated on her. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady and clear, "today is not just about this case. It's about the foundation of our justice system. It's about whether we choose to protect outdated rulings or whether we have the courage to correct them when they are proven wrong." She turned slightly, addressing the room as a whole. "We often talk about justice as if it's static, as if it's something carved in stone. But the truth is, justice is a living, breathing force. It evolves. It is not the law itself that grants fairness. It is our willingness to interpret it correctly, to ensure that no one is wrongfully punished, ignored, or dismissed simply because that's how it's always been done." Judge Whitmore listened intently, his fingers steepled before him. He had dismissed her once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. Karoline continued, her passion unwavering. "This isn't just about a legal precedent. This is about integrity. This is about trust. If the courts refuse to acknowledge their own mistakes, then what message does that send to the people who rely on them for justice?" A hush fell over the room as her words resonated. Judge Whitmore adjusted his glasses. "Miss Leavitt, I assume you are asking this court to officially overturn the previous ruling?" I am, Karoline confirmed. And not just for this case, but for every case that has been affected by that flawed ruling before it. I am asking this court to acknowledge that a mistake was made and to ensure that no one else suffers because of it. The judge exhaled deeply, his gaze flickering toward the legal aides and clerks surrounding him. He knew what she was asking was monumental, and yet she had given him no choice. With a slow nod, he turned to the court stenographer. This court acknowledges the arguments presented today and recognizes the merit in revisiting the previous ruling, he said, his voice steady but subdued. A review will commence immediately, and a final ruling will be determined accordingly. He paused, then added, "For now, court is adjourned." A thunderous murmur erupted in the room. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Attorneys exchanged hushed words, and even the spectators, who had entered expecting a routine legal proceeding, understood they had just witnessed something historic. Karoline remained still for a moment, letting the weight of victory sink in. Then she turned toward Judge Whitmore. "Thank you, Your Honor." He met her gaze, a begrudging yet genuine nod of respect passing between them. As she exited the courtroom, the cameras flashing and voices calling out her name, she knew one thing for certain. She had just rewritten history. And there you have it. Today, we witnessed a story that wasn't just about a courtroom battle. It was about resilience, standing up for what's right, and proving that respect is something that must be earned, not demanded. Karoline Leavitt walked into that courtroom expecting justice, but she got something far more valuable. An opportunity to demonstrate grace under pressure, unwavering confidence, and a lesson that the world won't soon forget. This story reminds us that strength isn't always about physical power or loud voices. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon is intelligence, integrity, and the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. Karoline didn't just win an argument, she won respect. She turned the tables on those who underestimated her, proving that no matter the setting, whether it's politics, law, or everyday life, those who remain steadfast in their beliefs will always have the upper hand. If this story inspired you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating narratives that challenge perspectives and spark discussions. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. We have plenty more eye-opening stories coming your way. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think Karoline handled the situation the best way possible? What would you have done in her place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters, and we love engaging with our incredible community. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey. Until next time, stay bold, stay informed, and never be afraid to challenge the status quo.